Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. What's up, fellow citizens of the world? Welcome. Oh my god, I forgot how to do this, it's been so long. Let's do this again. What's up, fellow citizens of the world? Jordan Patrick here and welcome to my channel. So it's been a very long time since I made my last video. I used to make videos weekly, 2 videos a week during 2.5 years, and one of my most watched videos of all time is things I wish I would have known before moving to France. A lot has changed in this past year because I just moved back to Paris, and in this follow-up video I want to talk about the things I wish I would have known before moving to the French countryside from Paris. So let's get started. On y va, c'est parti!
For those of you who are new to my channel, here's a quick recap. I'm Jordan Patrick, French American, now living in Paris after 4 years in Limoges, which is the French countryside. I started my channel during lockdown in 2020 to pass the time and fell in love with the creative process. I make videos on European and American travel, French culture, the ins and outs of life abroad, language learning, and the French citizenship process. Follow me on Instagram to check my stories to know when new videos are coming out on Sunday evenings, and sit back and enjoy the production.
So in that other video, I opened up a bottle of wine because I wanted to get some things off my chest. But in today's video, I'm drinking some coffee to get some energy because I have a lot to say. So for any of you who are new to my channel, I'm originally from Southern California, Santa Clarita, it's the suburbs of LA, and I've been living in France for 9 whole years now. Oh my gosh, it's like junior high, high school, and college all together. That's like insane to think about how long it's been. But I started my first 4 years living in the capital city, Paris, and then I moved to Limoges, which is in the countryside in the Nouvelle-Aquitaine region. Now I've been back in Paris for about 1.5 years, and oh my gosh, I forgot how many things were different between Paris and la province. So here in France, if you're not living in Paris, then you are provinciaux. Basically, for Parisians, it's kind of a condescending word for anyone who's not living in Paris. So it's not always taken as like a very nice word. Provinciaux, like people living outside of Paris, like a lot of them don't like Paris for this particular reason. So anyways, let's jump into all of my differences and things I wish I would have known before moving outside Paris to the Provence. So I'm going to start with the biggest one right up front, and that is for sure the prices. Now, don't get confused because not all prices are going to be different or even more expensive, because there are some things you can do in Paris that you can't do outside Paris for much cheaper. But of course, the big fat elephant in the room is that Paris prices for rent is enormous. It's crazy. It's by far the most expensive city to live in when it comes to rent. To put it in perspective, I'm living in Paris in the 17e arrondissement, and I have a relatively small studio for 20 square meters, but right now I'm paying close to 700 euros per month. And in Limoges, I had an apartment that was 3 times bigger than what I have now. It was a 2-bedroom apartment with a big living space. I was paying only 500 euros a month. So you can see that, okay, 200 euros more for 1/3 the space that I had in Limoges. That's a huge, huge difference. But don't get me wrong, not everything is going to be much cheaper in La Provence. When I first moved there, I was expecting going out to restaurants to be a lot cheaper than in Paris, and for sure, in Paris you can find some very expensive restaurants, like, don't get me wrong. But in Paris, you can find some very cheap restaurants, especially the very famous type of restaurant called the bouillon. Les bouillon restaurants are very typically Parisian, and there's a lot of history that is involved. It derives from the industrial ages, and in order to feed all of the employees, they would have these restaurants where cooks would feed like large amounts of food and could feed people for a very cheap price. And a lot of times it was French food because they were also very proud of that, and they wanted to really feed masses, and it was really good for the workers and helping them to basically survive and be able to build for the important French people. So what's really cool is that they kept the same concept, and it's all French cuisine and very cheap. This is something that you won't find outside of Paris, or at least I never saw it in Limoges, never saw it in Toulouse, Bordeaux, Poitiers, Angoulême. All of these places close to my area that I was living, but in Paris you have these types of restaurants everywhere around. Naturally, when I moved to Limoges, I was expecting that there would be some type of restaurant that was similar to that would offer, you know, a good meal for a cheap price. So that was something I definitely wish I would have known before going to Limoges, because I would have loved being able to go to restaurants more regularly, but that just wasn't the case. Another big daily expense that's kind of along the same lines is happy hour. Like if you want to meet up with your friends after work, you want to go to a happy hour. In Paris, there are tons of happy hour where you can get like a pint of beer for €3.50. That never happened in Limoges. I haven't even seen that too many times outside of Paris. So Paris, of course, you have like much more competition when it comes to people coming and sitting on your terrace, having a drink after work, just the after work culture in general. Happy hour is a Parisian thing, and that was definitely a shock that I did not appreciate. I'm not wanting to spend €9 for a beer, like no thank you. So that was a big plus for Paris. You must have noticed that partly through editing this video, I decided to do kind of like a rating system, where for each topic, I rate who does it better, and then at the end, I guess I'll say who has the best note. I like that idea. Another big thing when it comes to like daily expenses, and especially in the food field, groceries, I expected them to be a lot cheaper in Limoges, but in fact, if you're going to a supermarket in a city center, in any city, it doesn't even matter if you're in Paris or outside, it's gonna be relatively the same price and expensive. You have to go outside of a city center, you know, really get your money's worth when it comes to groceries, get bigger quantities, and those are all found outside of big cities. So I feel like it's harder to find in Paris because you have to go pretty far, and then taking public transportation is just not gonna be great if you're going grocery shopping. That's gonna bring me to my next point. So number 2 on my list is needing a car. I did not know I was going to need a car when I went to Limoges. Since I was living in Paris for 4 years, I've been so used to taking the public transportation, and that just became my normal everyday life. You know, I'm walking a lot, I'm taking the metro, I'm taking buses, I'm taking tramways. Oh, the city bikes, like that's been a huge plus. All of these modes of transportation, completely different between Paris and outside of Paris. Huge culture shock, do not like it, because it's not always necessarily faster to take a car, especially not in Paris. Which one does it better? Okay, well, you need a car in Limoges, so I would say that that's definitely a big plus for Paris. But if you do love driving outside of Paris, that's a bigger plus for you. Because in Paris, I do not recommend driving because it's going to be faster to take the metro, same amount of time to take a bus, but you won't have to park afterwards. City bikes, I would definitely give the edge to Paris. In some cities, you do have city bikes, but they're not as fully developed as they are in Paris. Don't get me started on the quality of the bikes, but the fact that you have these city bikes kind of everywhere around the city, definitely a huge plus for Paris. I know they have them in Toulouse, Bordeaux, Lyon. For that reason, like, okay, I have to give some points outside Paris. Maybe they're even better quality, so whatever. Because of needing a car, I had to pass my French driver's license, le code de la route, qui était hyper compliqué, surtout pour quelqu'un qui parle anglais maternel. J'ai eu besoin d'étudier pendant 6 mois tous les jours pour passer cet examen, et c'était vraiment nul aussi pour passer la vitesse et utiliser les voitures manuelles. Aussi pas un truc que j'ai vraiment apprécié. Maintenant c'est bon, je peux conduire tranquillement, mais but in the end I really did take advantage. I went on some weekend excursions with my car. I just don't need it, nor do I want to. So I avoid the car if I never need it. Third on the list, I'm just going to brush right over it, but it's the amount of empty space you have in the countryside compared to in Paris. In Paris, you never get a moment chill to yourself without people passing by. It's impossible. I really did love that advantage outside of Paris, which was really nice to just have that fresh space and not have a bunch of noise around you. That's something that I do miss from the countryside, because in Paris, you might go to a park, but you're gonna have so many people around you, like everywhere. But in Limoges, in this smaller city, it was pretty quiet, which sometimes got creepy, but I would say in general, it's a nice advantage to the countryside. Activities. Wow. Okay, Paris is going to kick this one's butt, because although you do have some student activities and, you know, special events that happen in Limoges, like les petites ventres, That's a really fun party that they celebrate in October, where you have this meat market in the streets, you have a lot of people drinking, and it's like very festive. But that doesn't happen very often, you know, it's once a year. But in Paris, you are never bored. There's always something to do, always concerts, activities, festivals, expositions, galleries, always something to do in Paris. That's why it's taken me so long to finally do this video, because I'm always busy with friends and doing tons of things. So Paris definitely has the edge on this one, but it also kind of takes away from my me time and my little hobby of doing YouTube videos. So I'm sorry for that. I'm gonna try to make a point to at least make a video every month. Stay tuned for more videos to come after this one. Somewhat related to the last topic is friends. Now, I already had a lot of friends in Paris, and I thought that it would be easy just to make new friends in Limoges, in the countryside, but unfortunately, that was not the case. In Paris, you have a lot of people who come and go, and so a lot more people are open to making new friends. But in the countryside, people tend to be already in their group of friends that they've had since they're really young. They are very slow to include people in those groups of friends. I wish I would have known about that in advance, because I might have tried harder to try to meet some international people. But in fact, when you're working, you know, you meet your colleagues and, you know, some of their friends sometimes, but you might feel somewhat excluded. That's how I felt. You know, I was there for 4 years. I did have a group of friends that I considered my friends, but I always felt kind of like an outsider. I wasn't always invited to all of their things, and I feel like because I was foreign and I didn't grow up in that region, they always viewed me as being that étranger. It's really unfortunate that I had that type of feeling, because I really did appreciate all these people, but it was sad. I was pretty lonely. So this one's hard, but I would have to give the edge to Paris because I'm étranger. It was easier for me to make other foreign friends in Paris. The next point, culture in general. Paris is a melting pot, so you have a lot of mixes of culture, which I freaking love that about Paris. But at the same time, you're not getting like a local French culture. You're getting Parisian culture, but it's like its own thing. I wouldn't say that there's anything remarkably Parisian, like super cultural, besides the fact that people are rude and people are busy, they're always in a rush. They're stressed. I mean, all those things above, like that's very Parisian, because people are so much more chill in the countryside. And there are some like festivities that they do all throughout France, which are really fun in Paris, like 14 Juillet, which in other cities they celebrate it on the 13th of July with the fireworks from the Eiffel Tower. I go there every year. You might have seen other videos about that. I made a few. Also, La Fête de la Musique, I made a video on that one too. That's a really fun, festive day that they do all throughout France, but it's particularly great in Paris. That's why I always come back each year for that, which celebrates summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the 21st of June. But I wouldn't say that that's like Parisian culture. That's just something that you do all throughout France, so it's not particular to Paris. So for some of the more like very typical for certain regions, maybe like La Fête de Bayonne, Festival d'Avignon, Festival de Cannes, Les Petites Ventes that I talked about earlier in Limoges. You have a lot of these like very cultural things that happen in a lot of smaller cities within France. You know what? We can say that Paris is the culture of history. Which one do you find more culture? I would say for local cultures outside in the countryside or in the Provence, when it comes to just history and things to do, activities, Paris for sure. Along the same lines as within the culture, let's talk about the French language. I spoke a little bit of French when I was living in Paris the first time, but I arrived here having a very, very basic level, and because I had international friends, I would say that I spoke more English than French during my everyday life. But that changed when I went to Limoges. Like, I had to speak French. Like, I had no option, actually. So that was really good for my learning of the local language, the national language. C'est pour ça que je parle français maintenant. C'est grâce à Limoges que je parle français. Parce que si je restais à Paris pendant ces 4 ans, j'aurais pas parlé autant de français. Donc pour cette raison, je suis vraiment reconnaissant de l'expérience d'avoir vécu dans la campagne. So I'm very grateful for needing to speak French and the local language where I was, because I didn't have to in Paris. And you know what? I'm gonna say that I'm actually very offended in Paris nowadays when I go to order something or I'm speaking with someone and they switch to English. I'll just continue speaking French because I know that my French is better than their English for the most part. So for me, I take it as an offense, but that never happened in Limoges. So for that reason, I would definitely give the advantage to the countryside, because if you want to speak French, move outside of Paris. That's it for the language appreciation. This next point kind of strikes a nerve with me because it was so annoying to travel from Limoges. There are other cities within France that traveling will be easier, like that's a fact. But from Paris, you can travel worldwide. Most likely, you're going to have to come back to Paris to then go on a longer trip outside of Europe, especially. Not gonna lie, this was pretty annoying from Limoges because I would have to take a train or a bus to go to Paris to then fly somewhere. So it would take me half a day already to get to Paris to then go, spend another day traveling. Obviously, Paris is better for that, but if you're just wanting to travel within Europe, I would say a city like Toulouse, Bordeaux, or Lyon might even be better than Paris. I say that because low-cost flights are easier and cheaper to fly from these other cities. Like if you're living in Paris and you're taking smaller flights within Europe, a lot of times you have to go to Orly, which is an airport that's it's annoying to get there. Let's be real, it sucks right now because eventually line 14 is going to go all the way to Orly, but we have to wait another year for that. I actually hesitated moving from Limoges to Toulouse. That's where I was originally planning on moving. One of the huge benefits to moving to Toulouse would have been being able to travel within Europe from the airport that's only like a 20-minute bus ride from the city center of Toulouse. In Paris, you do have Ryanair, but that's flying from Beauvais, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. Plus that bus is going to cost you like 17 euros one way just to get there, plus your time and everything. It's so annoying. So with all that being said, obviously Paris is the better choice when it comes to traveling. You can literally go anywhere in the world from Paris. Hypothesis of the situation. So my final point is going to be about the people. This also kind of correlates with the culture because although I've talked about friends and how hard it was to kind of integrate into a friend group of French friends in these smaller cities in Provence, I want to talk about just like the people and how they make you feel. People in Paris can be a bit cold. Like it's kind of natural to be cold with people when you have so many people and you have less like very meaningful connections or conversations in everyday life. At the boulangerie, au supermarché, à la banque. But they see so many people every day that they're not going to really like talk with you or like kind of joke around with you or like build really a relationship with their customers because you just have so much foot traffic and so many people coming and going that they're not really going to remember you. However, in Limoges, like I would go out sometimes to certain restaurants or bars or to the pharmacy or certain places, and because I had an accent, because they could see I was foreign, and I built more relationships with commerçants, which I wouldn't have expected having lived in Paris, and I didn't really have any of those like interactions that were friendly interactions. They were more just kind of like, okay, you come in, you get what you need, you go. You don't really talk at all, really. So for that reason, like it's kind of nice to have those little interactions with people you don't know. Small talk's not a thing in Paris. It's just something that is in the culture. The American culture is small talk. And so it was nice to have that as kind of like a little refresh of friendliness. If you're asking someone for directions on the streets in Limoges or outside Paris, they don't mind taking 10 seconds or 20 seconds to help guide you in the direction that you're trying to go. Whereas in Paris, like a lot of times people just keep walking. They won't even stop. They won't even acknowledge you exist. Not to say that Parisians are all rude or won't stop to help you for directions, because there's definitely some people that will, but I would say you have a 50-50 chance. So for that reason, I do give the edge to les provinciaux. It's just not every day that I use that word. So here are the total notes and scores for both Paris and Provence. You can see who's done better. I'm sure it's going to be pretty damn close. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and stay tuned for future videos to come. You might want to subscribe for that, and I'll see you in the next one. À la prochaine. Ciao, ciao for now. Besides all of its history, okay, that was stupid. Déjà, it's compliqué pour, oh my god, it was like such a mix of Anglais. it's so weird to like speak English and French in the same, like, in the nouveau. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, monsieur, and that means, you know, you're kind of, it can be seen as a little condescending.